Never saw it coming, but here it is, and it's clear it is, changing every life. An invisible invader has come around and brought profound trouble and strife. But that's not all there is to the story. The human spirit is a thing of glory.
Firefighters and folks who drive a bus, supermarket workers, yeah, they do so much. Dedicated teachers working virtually, they keep going, the light keeps glowing in our society.
Healthcare workers working in harm's way, tending to the sick ones every day, and they all answer the call. Without them, where would we be? They keep going, the light keeps glowing in our society.
They keep going, the light keeps glowing, and it's shining now to make the load lighter. They keep going, the light keeps glowing. In the dark, it only gets brighter and brighter and brighter, brighter.
People making sure that folks can eat, sanitation workers coming to your street. There's so many others too, working tirelessly. They keep going, the light keeps glowing in our society.
They keep going, the light keeps glowing, keep on glowing, and it's shining now to make the load lighter. They keep going, the light keeps glowing, the light keeps glowing. In the dark, it only gets brighter and brighter and brighter, it gets brighter.
Hard times they may come about, but this light cannot be put out. In the future, people will see how our light lit this dark time in history.
Everybody's world turned upside down. School is closed, so kids and families are homebound. We all miss things we used to do and people we love to see. But we keep going, the light keeps glowing in our society.
We keep going, the light keeps glowing, keep on glowing, and it's shining now to make the load lighter. We keep going, the light keeps glowing, the light keeps glowing. In the dark, it only gets brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. We keep going, the light keeps glowing, keep on glowing. We keep going, the light keeps glowing, the light keeps glowing.
Welcome, everyone, to the virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship on the Emerald Coast. I'm Charlene Farley, a member of this fellowship. This Thursday is Thanksgiving Day, a day we think about and give thanks for all the gratitudes in our lives. The Thanksgiving dinner is one of tradition, one which typically all the family members gather for a feast and celebration of coming together. Sometimes, unfortunately, this inclusiveness is disturbed by family arguments, the aftermath of a particularly divisive election, and the continued hardships caused by COVID pandemic constrain family and friends' relationships. Sometimes these arguments can be avoided by just steering away from a discussion of politics or other contentious topics. As Oscar Wilde said, after a good dinner, one can forgive even one's own relations. In her usual form of mixing wit and wisdom, the Reverend Meg Barnhouse, our recorded speaker this morning, offers an option for dinner conversation with loved ones, more conservative in their worldviews than we use. We hope her advice, stemming from love for our family members, will help keep the peace in your Thanksgiving this year. We wish all our UU friends a safe and happy holiday weekend. After the big day, please join us for our special November 29th service. That Sunday, UUFEC will participate in a joint worship service with other Unitarian Universalist churches in the Florida and Alabama cluster. The service will be streamed on November the 29th, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Check your November 27th e-news for more details and how to access the service. Our regular UUFEC services will resume on December 6th at its usual time and place. Our service continues now with a lighting of the chalice, performed by Winky Sweet, a member of our congregation.
Our chalice lighting today is by Teresa Cooley and Carrie McDonald. Love is hard. Love is hard. Love for people, especially those who are different from you. Love that says, I see you as a person. Love that says, let your unique light shine in the world, because each of our souls touches the divine mystery. Love that says, we're on a journey together and my fate is tied up with yours. Love that grabs you and won't let you go until your whole life is dedicated to siding with love. Love that changes the world. Love is hard. Do it anyway.
Good morning. I have another story for you. But first, I'd like to show you something. So my daughter has a t-shirt, and this is what it says. It says, humankind, be both. Well, we're pretty much human just by being people. But what does it mean to be kind? And that's what our book is about today. Being kind means a lot of things, but being kind means smiling at the new student in class, holding the door open for someone else, and sticking up for someone who is being bullied. Being kind is forgiving someone who has hurt you, and helping an injured or lost animal. Being kind means being patient even when you're in a hurry, and saying please and thank you, you're welcome, and I'm sorry. Being kind means encouraging someone who needs support, and noticing when someone is sad and taking the time to understand why. Being kind means caring for those less fortunate than you are, and treating others the way you like to be treated. So show your friends what it means to be kind, and spread the word. If we can all be kind to each other and to ourselves, our world will be more loving, caring, and harmonious. So that's our story today. Maybe we can all practice being kind this week.
Human family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse bemused delight, brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane. I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China. We weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike.
A lot of us are in work groups and friend groups and on Facebook and with family members who think very differently from the way that we do. And we have a lot of energy for talking to them until they see how right we are. And so I wanted to talk today about having dialogue with people who think very differently from yourself. Now, this might be equally useful for conservatives who have crazy liberals in their family, or for liberals who have crazy conservatives in their family, and Thanksgiving is coming. So this is a roadmap for all of us about how to change the mind of somebody who disagrees with us. Let's look at science for a minute. Science, when studying people who have conservative politics and people who have liberal politics, they are finding out that the brains of conservatives and liberals are wired somewhat differently. This might be from birth, or it might be something that's learned. The brain is very plastic, and they're finding out that it's more plastic than we thought. But when people are shown pictures which are pleasant, neutral, scary, or disgusting, they respond differently with different autonomic nervous system responses and different eye movements. And what they found was that conservatives react more strongly to the photographs that are scary or disgusting than liberals do. So about half of their respondents, half of their subjects in the survey react pretty strongly, and half of them don't react as strongly. And the autonomic nervous system responses don't always correlate with what the subjects say, how the subjects say they're responding. So they might go, that's not too bad, but according to their body, they reacted pretty strongly. What is up with that? So what they think is, and this is a study from the University of Nebraska, a guy named John Hibbing, University of Nebraska. He came up with the conclusion that people with conservative political views tend, not always, but tend to react more strongly to fearful or negative stimuli. And what he calls this is being threat-oriented. So they're very watchful for threats and react strongly to threats. And so he theorizes the conservative focus in politics on a strong military, on well-controlled immigration, on tough law enforcement, and on making sure that guns are widely available, that kind of goes with a threat-oriented mindset. And he surmises that this threat orientation was very helpful in an evolutionary sense for the survival of the human race. In fact, starting in 2003 with a guy named John Jost at NYU, these studies have been coming fast and furious because everybody's curious about why is our country so polarized? Why can we not speak to each other civilly very much? This could be one of the reasons. And the Yost study says that conservatives show psychologically a greater preference for certainty and less of a preference for ambiguity, whereas liberals don't really prefer certainty and are very comfortable with ambiguity. And that liberals are more new experience oriented rather than threat oriented, which also evolutionarily would help the human race move forward. So you have these two groups of people that nature creates, apparently, one with their foot on the gas and one with their foot on the brake, and that is how nature prefers it, so that we balance one another out. Our culture and our world needs the threat-oriented people who are ready to keep everybody safe, and the new experience-oriented people who think about safety less. And the correlations between a person's responses to these photographs and between a person's political views are so strong that the researchers find that they have been able to predict someone's politics without words being spoken at all, just by watching their eye movements when they see these photographs. Ain't that something? So, I do know how to speak English properly. Graduated from Duke, it's all right. Just every now and then I will lapse into vernacular. In fact, when Jost came up with his findings in 2003, it sounded, this threat orientation and need for certainty sounded so unflattering to some politicians that his funding was looked into. But so many of his peers scientifically were coming up with the same things, and so many people finally realized, well, hey, it's not bad to be threat-oriented, and it's not bad to be new experience-oriented. Nobody's crazy. We need both, so that the funding was left alone. Conservatives also tend, according to the studies, to be happier and more stable in their lives. Liberals are a little more neurotic. I'm going to look into their funding. But being sure of what's true and being sure and comfortable with what's familiar and being well protected against strange ideas apparently can keep you a little more stable. And also what they found is that conservatives can be somewhat more comfortable with the idea of inequalities, that this is just the way it is. Some people are not going to have as much as other people. That's just the way of it. I got a birthday card from a conservative member of my family, which I thought was hysterical, and it was a plate with the remains of crumbs on it, and it said, "I got you a birthday cake, but I gave it away in pieces to people who were not fortunate enough to have a birthday today." I was like, well, that's how they see it. My eye movements were calm. Another thing that's different is the moral code and framework within which you see the world and make your decisions about the world. The people who study, I just came across this research this week, and it's very scholarly and dense, and I could understand all 163 pages of this study if I had time to read it, but the sermon had to be delivered now. So I read fast. But what I gathered is that there are 5 different moral codes that they have named. One is the harm and care code. Is this harming anybody? We're going to, how do we care for people? And one is the fairness code. Then there is also the respect for authority code, the purity and sanctity of ideas code, and the in-group and loyalty code. So is this loyal? Are these ideas pure and sanctified? Does this idea have respect for the way things are and respect for authority? Is this fair, or does this cause harm, or does it care for people? And what they found is that liberals mostly make their decisions based on the harm, care, and the fairness and inequality code. We're looking for, is this fair? Is this just? Does this do harm, or does this care for people? Whereas conservatives use all 5 codes fairly equally. I thought that was interesting too. So, how do you change somebody? We all know it's possible because people do change. For this part of the sermon, I read an article by FBI hostage negotiators. How do you talk to somebody who's actually crazy, out of control, and has hostages? So none of us is talking to somebody that badly off, usually. Unless alcohol is involved at Thanksgiving. And there is what they call ladder to behavioral change. And our problem is that most of us, conservatives and liberals alike, jump all the steps, and we start on the 4th rung of the ladder. Let me tell you what the first rung is. If you want to have dialogue with somebody who's very different from you, the very first stage, the one that takes the longest, the one that demands the most front-end investment, is active listening. Active listening. How's that different from just listening? Active listening means that you give signals that you're listening. You go, I see. You ask open-ended questions. Tell me more. How did you come to this position? What do you like about that guy? Why is this important to you? Help me understand. And the way you ask those questions is because you really want to understand. You're not just looking down the list and go, help me understand. And by the way, what's wrong with you is never a good question. So, you make encouraging sounds, you ask open-ended questions. Another way of active listening is by naming the emotion that you hear. So when somebody, and this works in couples, families by the way too, when somebody is very upset or when somebody is laying out their beliefs, you just, as far as it can sound natural and not weird to you, repeat the last few words they said. They have therapist computer programs that'll do this. While you're typing to them, they just repeat your last 3 words and you kind of feel understood. So if somebody says, I just don't think background checks are good for guns, I think that it will make a list and they'll come get our guns, and you say, they'll come get your guns. And then they go, yeah, and furthermore, or you could say, tell me more. And this takes a long time. You also name the emotion that you hear. Did I tell you that part? You just say, that sounds upsetting. You sound angry. That sounds fearful. And then they can either say, yeah, or no, I'm not fearful. I'm mad. You go, thank you, okay. So after the active listening comes a point where you number 2 step, you have empathy. This is really hard, because if someone disagrees with you a lot, it's very hard to have empathy with where they're coming from. You can't fake empathy. You have to really have it. That means you have to understand where they're coming from. You can't say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. They can feel whether you really understand where they're coming from or not, right? Can't you feel it when you're talking to somebody? Have you ever had that experience where somebody understands where you're coming from? Yeah, thank you for nodding at me. So empathy is the next step after active listening, and it's very hard because in order to be empathetic with somebody whose views are so different, you have to actually get in touch with those elements in yourself that would lead you to feel that way. You have to become, if you're a liberal, you have to become in touch with the threat-oriented part of you that you don't like to look at. Or if you're a conservative talking to a liberal, you have to become in touch with that part of yourself that's hungry for new experiences, that's not scared of anything strange, that in fact seeks it out, that in fact thinks maybe we shouldn't have any borders at all. What's the point of borders anyway? So if we get in touch with those little slivers of ourselves that we don't normally listen to, perhaps we can find some empathy. After empathy comes rapport. Rapport is when you understand them and they understand you, and you both can feel the understanding between you. That's rapport. And at that point, you can go on to the next step, which is influence. That's the one we usually try to start with. I'm going to try to influence you. See, already there were so many things before influence. Thanksgiving dinner's over. And by the time you have enough understanding of where the other person's coming from, and you have enough rapport with them, by that time, you're almost as open to being influenced by them as they are to be influenced by you. Maybe your mind will change. Did you ever think of that? And after influence, yeah, I see you shaking your head. And after the influence portion comes the behavioral change portion, if you're going to get there at all. Some people say that you can more easily influence somebody during the influence phase if you appeal not to your moral code, but to theirs. You say, what is important to you in this situation? What feels moral to you? Okay, then I would like to ask you to consider that this political position is not consonant with what is in your moral code. Would Jesus talk about anchor babies? I don't know. Doubt it. I doubt it because I'm a liberal. I don't know. I didn't know Jesus. I wasn't there. Nobody here was there, by the way. Also, being quiet can be a great tool when you're having dialogue. Sometimes just hearing yourself, if anybody's gone to therapy or had a discussion with somebody who's trying to help them understand themselves, you understand that just hearing yourself say something out into the air sometimes changes the way that you think about it or feel about it. And so I remember having dialogue with some Moonies. We were on a trip together, and I was sitting on the bus for 4 hours with this guy who was a Moonie, and we were talking about his beliefs and what Mr. Moon did. And I never called him Reverend Moon because he doesn't have a seminary degree. He's an electrical engineer. So I feel somewhat strongly. I said, so how does Mr. Moon, what does he do before he marries y'all? How does he pick? And he was telling, what he did, because he used to have these mass weddings. I know some of y'all are too young to remember, but he would have these mass weddings where he'd marry thousands of people, 2 by 2, to each other. And he was saying, and he takes away your sins before he marries you. I said, he takes away your sins? Technique. Takes away your sins? He went, yeah. I said, how does he do that? Well, he dabs some wine on your photograph. I just let it hang there in the air. And then I said in the most emotionally neutral tone I could, he takes away your sins by dabbing wine on your photograph. He said, now that I say it out loud, it sounds really stupid. And I've had that experience about my belief systems too before. When I say that out loud, it sounds really stupid. I think we've all been there. Hope so anyway. It makes you a better person. So another element in all of this is that we have the conservatives and the liberals now, since the 80s, have different facts. There used to be this thing called the Fairness Doctrine. Some of y'all remember it, where newspapers had to have the pro point of view and the con point of view. They had to find both. The radio stations, the TV stations had to have both points of view on. That was the law, Federal Communications Commission law. But during the Reagan administration, lots of things got deregulated. That was one of the things that got deregulated. There was no more Fairness Doctrine. And so the next year, Rush Limbaugh's show came on the air, and we began to have conservative radio and liberal radio, conservative TV, liberal TV, and eventually conservative facts and liberal facts, red facts and blue facts. And so when you come to have a dialogue with somebody, you're dealing with totally different facts, or facts, because making up things is not a property of one group or the other. In fact, the first time facts were made up that I learned about in school as a media major was that during the debate with Nixon, JFK won the debate because not only did he have good makeup on and he didn't look like a ghost, number two, he had statistics at his fingertips. He was just naming statistic after statistic, and later on admitted that he had made them up, every one. And so now we have, we're trying to have dialogue. This is why we're so polarized. We're trying to have dialogue with people who have had completely different news stories emphasized to them, with completely different theories, editorial behind them, and completely different points of view, and never the twain shall meet unless you're just a political junkie who's also retired and you can hear both sides. Then you're not really able to follow all of the various points of view, and you don't even hear everything. So all of this is to say, I don't want to ask you to give up the fun Facebook charts and jokes and the memes and things. I'm not asking the conservatives to give up those, and I'm not asking the liberals to give up those, except just please check and see that they're actually true. And because it makes you feel good and energized and happy, and in a little bit of a nasty way, but not too nasty, just to shoot those things out into the air by email or by Facebook. But I am asking you to let go of the idea that this will finally convince them. Look at this. This will finally do it. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. What's going to do it? Listening, if anything. And if these are people you love, you listen with love. And you say, I am just going to listen to you instead of trying to correct your facts or make you see things my way. I'm going to let go of that and just listen to you because I love you. And that means that you are never going to understand how right I am. And one day I will not care. One day I will not care.
Meditation on Opposites by Alex Capitan. Spirit of the universe, we ask you to help us see beyond our dependence on opposites, to transcend our desire to know who is like us and who is not. Help us to deeply listen and to truly know one another.